Oh, hello. This is the Green Corn Rebellion Show. I'm Gregory Harden II, and today I am here with my friend Lauren Richter, who is a teacher and candidate for the Shawnee City Commission in Ward 6. But to be clear, because she lives in Ward 6, right? Not
Mhm.
2, yeah,
Yes.
6. The Shawnee Charter is set up to where if you live in Shawnee, you can vote for all of the ward candidates, regardless of what ward you live in. It's a
Yeah.
weird system, but that's how that works. Anyway, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Whoa, 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 whoa. Stop what you're doing. Okay. If you like this video and you like the other content on my channel, please hit the like button on this video. Also, go hit subscribe like right now. And also, when you hit subscribe, click the bell so you can get notifications whenever I put out a new video. So, thanks. All right, enjoy the rest of the video. Um, so first question, and this is the question I ask all candidates usually if it's their first time. Where are you from and where did you grow up?
Well, that's an easy answer because it's the same answer. I grew up in Shawnee and I was born at the hospital, Shawnee Regional.
You grew up here in Shawnee and you graduated Shawnee High School in '07,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh 07.
Okay. And you went where to college?
I started out at OBU and then I did like a a walkabout of colleges throughout my time, but I ended back up at OBU and graduated from there. So just 3 years late, no big, but that was my gap period, not year, gap period, where I worked and tried to figure out what I wanted to study because at that point you're wasting money if you don't know what you're going to study. So
Especially at OBU, where it's like the most expensive university in the state, or
it
one of them at
was,
least.
I remember thinking my freshman year that it was expensive. And then when I went back, when I reapplied 4 years later,
Mhm.
um, just the tuition was the cost that I remember being the full cost for room, board, tuition fees, everything in just a 4 year period. So, and it's
Wow.
even more so now.
Yeah. Because you went to a college in the Stone Ages a long time ago, right? Actually, it
Yeah.
wasn't that long ago when you graduated. It was less than 10 years ago, right?
Yeah. I graduated. I was supposed to graduate in 2011, but I graduated in 2014. So
Cool.
it doesn't seem like I'm knocking on a decade of graduating college.
So, what made you want to become a teacher?
I'm trying to remember my thought process. To be honest, I was at a job that I didn't like, a full-time job. I didn't like it. Um, if I could do that job now, it was a desk job. It was a secretarial job. I could do it really well now because I've come into my own as a person and personality, but I just didn't like it. And I thought, what's the way to get out of this? Cause I'm tired of job hopping. I want to do something better. And I thought, well, I'll go. That was how my mentality was with college. I'll just go to school again. I'll just try school again. And maybe I can find something where I can, whatever I do, I can stay in Shawnee because I'm tired of moving. I had moved to Edmond. I had lived in Oklahoma City, and I just never stuck. It didn't stick. I kept coming back to Shawnee, and then when I made it back, within 2 years, I was back in college, and I thought, well, I mean, I like going to school. That's what I thought. I like going to school. I don't like paying for it, but I like going to school. And and so what if I looked into education and I had done, gosh, I had credits in nursing, public relations for like a day and a half. Accounting, I had some accounting credits, some business classes. I had a couple of humanities credits from UCO that I had done online, just trying to figure out what to do and keep my loans in forbearance, deferment to get away from me style. And I think I took like an intro to education, like 101.
Mhm.
And it was the dean of the department taught it that year. And then he retired the next year, the year after that. And I thought, yeah, this is it. I can do this. I get to be the education aspect of my life all over again every single year for the rest of my life if I chose. And then it got to where I was thinking about, like, I just wanted to help others. And I had tried to join, at that time, I had tried to join a couple of service groups like Junior Service League. I had tried just figuring out a way to connect myself more into Shawnee, because I knew that if I didn't, I would eventually start to get antsy and look elsewhere, even though I wanted to stay. But job wise, there wasn't anything that I could tie myself to for the long haul. And so I started to take more education classes. I got some cores out of the way that I was missing, like Western Civ, which was unbearable, but I passed with a B for the full year on both classes. And that let me know that I was going to be a good college student right there. Cause I feel like that was always referred to as the weed out credits. Like, you were either going to make it at OBU or you weren't. And back then, at least, it was whether you could pass Western Civ or not. And then I got into the subject area classes, and I thought, I'm learning how to do these things I already know how to do, but from the teacher side of it. And then they start immediately putting you into the classroom to observe and watch. And there was just something about it, the opportunity. Maybe it was just kismic in that way, because now I feel like I don't know what else I could have done with my life if I wasn't in the classroom. And when I went back in 2020, it was like 6 weeks before we locked down, I decided to pursue a master's. And I thought, well, if I pursue this master's and I get a job off of it, because I have it in leadership and administration, that I would eventually have to leave the classroom. And so I'm kind of like at this fork in the road. Where do I stay in the classroom with this master's that's not being utilized to its full potential? Or do I leave the classroom that I love in order to do the next thing that I think I'm going to love too on a greater scale? So it was originally just to get myself rooted back into Shawnee. I'd gone to Grove for 4th through 8th grade, and then went to Shawnee High School. And I thought, wouldn't it be neat if I could be a teacher there and then send my kids there one day? And then, my face, at least at Grove, we have little panel photos on the walls. And then I could say, if my kids go to the high school, I was here, I remember this class, and now I work here still in some way. And it's worked. I mean, it worked I worked for Shawnee Public Schools for a year. I'd worked at North Rock Creek too. And I'm trying to get back into Shawnee Public Schools now. I don't know if it'll be as a teacher or an administrator. It's just whatever's open. But it's still late in the year, but there's always jobs open, like into the summer. So
yeah, that's cool. What has made you want to run for the city commission?
So I got interested in it. It kind of stems from when I was running for the office that you're running for back in 2018. I realized afterwards that it was kind of too large scale for me at the time. And it was almost too large scale for my ideas or like the goals that I had, the desire that I had to implement, be like a change agent. And so this time around, because I've lived in the ward since I moved back to Shawnee for 2.5 years now. And partly because I've kind of come into my own as an adult and my career, I've kind of gotten to where I'm more confident speaking out about things that I notice or observe, agree with or disagree with. And I didn't have that confidence in 2018 when I was running. And I think part of it was because of how large scale it was, but it also, I grew up a lot. And it's only been 4 years, but I've grown up a lot, and I got the time to start my family. And I think that helped me grow up. And when I learned that it was up for vacancy, I thought, well, okay, it's something that I can dedicate the time to, and I wouldn't lose my career over it. If I had gotten that seat, the district seat for the state, I would have had to lose my job. I would have had to move to the capital, and that would be my main focus for the state level. And I wanted to represent and work in that capacity, but not lose my education career, whether it was teaching or if I'm going to be an admin. And I watched like Travis and Darren when they were running, and it was almost because I knew them outside of their elections.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost like I got to see like a development in them because of the opportunity that the commission could provide for them, the opportunity to make changes, to help progress different aspects of the city, to revitalize or to change in some way. And I've always felt like, at least in this last decade or so, that I am a change agent. I don't shy away from it. I tried to implement it in most ways. And I thought, I'm tired of barking about things that don't make sense to me, or that I think we should try, or things that I could see we could do better at. Tired of barking about it. And then I thought, there's something else I can do about it. And after seeing Travis and Darren run their elections, and then Cammie being appointed, I thought, I could do this. I could go for this. I think I could actually go for running and have a good chance. And then I've got all these ideas just swirling around in my head, and I need somewhere to outlet them. And this is it. I think I could be really good at this if given the chance.
All right. Episodes of the Green Corn Rebellion Show are sponsored by Oklahoma Progress Now. Oklahoma Progress Now is a 501c4 organization focused on building progressive power in Oklahoma. Their primary efforts are on developing progressive content for a 21st century audience, coalition, and capacity building across progressive organizations and causes, and working to see elected leaders who are more responsive to their constituents and the needs of the many. Areas of focus include progressive messaging and communications, coalition building and resource sharing, and focused progressive policy goals. You can check out their Twitch live streams, and they go live on Facebook at noon, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Please support this organization. It's a really great organization. It's just getting started here in Oklahoma. Thank you. Now enjoy the rest of the video. But so what are some things you'd like to have happen in Shawnee if you're elected?
Some of the things, like I used the term barking earlier, and I mean that like in a good way, kind of, like you can complain and then you can like be productive and get out what you say. I've always wanted to look into the recycling program, because I remember when it first started. I can't remember the year. I want to say it's been within 10 years, just judging where my life was at certain times. It's been in the last 10 years. And I don't know about a whole lot of people, but I recycle religiously. Like we fill that sucker up. We could probably do with a second one of the curbside bins. And when I've visited friends who live in Norman and Moore in Oklahoma City, they have the tall, full-size poly carts, and they can recycle glass. And before, I used to be able to take my glass to one of those sites. There used to be an old drop-off site at the Homeland parking lot on Independence, and that's been gone for a long time. So I would go to the 45th site, and I used to be able to drop off anything there, but that's where I took my glass. And then those have gone away. And so I'd like to look into adding to the recycling program, or maybe modifying it some way, because I think that it's something that we need to look at. I mean, we're putting money into, it itself, the program, and I think it could be a good job opportunity if it could be expanded. Plus, it's good for the environment.
Yeah. I didn't even know there was a recycling program for Shawnee.
Yes. So when it started, you got this piece of paper with I think it was your water bill, and it told you and it had pictures. When it was an infographic of what they could recycle and what they couldn't. And it's so great because they don't do this, as far as I know, in Oklahoma City and other places where my friends live. This bin, you put everything that you want to recycle in it, and they go through at your curb and sort it. So if there's something in there that isn't supposed to be in there, they'll just turn around and put it right in your trash bag or trash bin. And so I didn't know this until a couple weeks ago, but my daughter, my 10-month-old, we buy her these little, like the cereal powder, like rice cereal powder. And I don't look at the labels. I just, if it's plastic, it goes in. Okay.
Yeah.
It's been my mindset for a while now with all this plastic stuff. And the label isn't recyclable, but the container is.
Hmm.
And so I've watched, when I've been home, I've watched them tear it off and throw it in my trash can and then put the plastic in back in the bin and then toss the bin in. And like all the purees that I get for my daughter, they're in jars. And for a while, I was just stacking them up nice and neat, ready to take them somewhere. And I ended up taking them to Oklahoma City to put in my friend's poly cart. So that's one of the things, is see if we can expand or improve on the recycling program. I've always wondered about like different, you know, when you drive around town, you see different like vacant lots that used to be parking maybe, or used to be like a foundation for a building. And then the grass is overgrown, the trees are overgrown. And you wonder like what used to be there. Hi. No, I'm good. Thank you. And who owns that spot? You know, what's the plan for it, if anything? And I think it'd be nice if we could maybe like inventory those areas, if they're city owned or if they're privately owned. If they're city owned and we're you know, we hold the deeds on them, maybe we could use them for something. If it's abandoned buildings that we can turn into affordable housing or centers for some sort of entertainment, just figuring out what we could, or if it's just a vacant lot and there's no reason for the concrete to be there, maybe we could beautify it in some way, turn it into recreation in some way, outdoor recreation. If it was large enough and in a specific area of town, we could even have walking trails or different splash pad like pop-ups and things like that. Because there's a lot of different areas I feel like that I'm just like, what is that for? What did it used to be? What could it be for? Without doing a whole lot to it, I feel like, especially if it's a good sturdy building. If we've got a lot of old buildings that probably have really good studs and foundation, and we could use them instead of just having them. You know, Shawnee's growing. I know it's growing in population. I feel like we're kind of like at this point where we're either going to continue to expand until we hit our barriers and can't go any further, or we can see what we already have instead of growing outwards, growing from within and growing inside. So that's another thing. I don't know if that's kind of like a pipe dream or what, but that's kind of one of the bigger ones for me too with the recycling program.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because whenever I'm walking downtown, which isn't often, more like driving downtown, but when I do walk, I'll see a building that used to be a store maybe 10 years ago whenever I was younger, and now it's empty. And it's like, okay, well, who owns it? Why isn't it being rented out or remodeled or something of that nature? Because they have, especially on Main Street is mostly what I'm talking about, because there's several different buildings on Main Street, because they redid Main Street, what was it, 6 or 7 years ago, and it looks really nice, and that's why I like walking down there.
I remember.
Yeah, and that's why I like walking down there occasionally. And it's disappointing to see some buildings that, you know, they look like, some of them are really nice buildings because they're old, some of the oldest buildings in town. And, you know, I'd like to see something in there.
Or like if the bottom half is being used, it stems from a curiosity of what's up there. For me, like, especially buildings like off of Bell and near the Aldridge, I kept thinking, what is up there? Is there anybody up there? Like, what's going on up there type of thing? And then I thought, well, if it's abandoned or if it's just not being used, maybe it could be used for something, like how they did. I I don't know if you remember it being the old laser tag, but then it was Frontline for a while, and now it's the Healthy Hive. They've got housing up above it now. The second half, the top half is housing. And I thought that was really cool to do because I didn't even know that upper half existed. I just remember being the laser tag and then Frontline after that.
That's interesting. But yeah, there was, along with the recycling, another thing that I have been kind of wondering about is if we are going to do something to have more charging stations for electric cars.
Yeah, we've only got the one that's out there.
I didn't even
TJ Maxx.
I didn't know that existed.
Yeah. I remember that was, I can't remember if it came right when, if they built it right in with the building and the businesses, or if it came a little bit afterwards. I could see a potential in different areas. And it's a good spot for it too, because it's right off of I-40. I just don't know how many electric vehicles are in town.
So see, that's the thing though, because this is what I've been saying to people about the whole buying electric cars thing. In reference to like the gas prices going up, because I see a lot of people saying like, oh, we don't need to address the oil prices or the gas prices. We just need to tell people to buy electric cars. It's like, okay, point to me the nearest electric charging station where you are. If you can't do that, stop telling people to go buy electric cars, or stop complaining, or stop telling other people to not complain if they have to drive a Tahoe or whatever because they have 5 or 6, 7 kids. Because you have to have the infrastructure in place. So therefore people think, okay, now that that's there, I can use it.
Yeah, I feel like it's the opposite mentality. Like the demand is so high that you have to like struggle to keep up with it. Like we've got so many electric cars now, we've got to worry and rush to get these charging stations in. It's like induced demand.
Yeah, because I think with somewhere like with a place like Shawnee, you'd have to start small, because you are going to have some people push back and say what you said, like, well, there's no one driving electric cars, why are we having these? It's like, well, if we have 10 near I-40 or some somewhat populated area where a lot of drive, then it might encourage more people to drive because they'll know that they exist. So therefore, if they want to go buy an electric car, they can, because they know charging stations right there. Because otherwise, if they don't know about the one that's supposedly by TJ Maxx that I've never seen, or maybe have seen and didn't know that's what it was, they'll have to go to Oklahoma City. And even in Oklahoma City, they don't have that many, but like, where else are you gonna go if you don't know where one's at? But yeah. So let's see. So what are your thoughts on the homeless issue in Shawnee, and how do you think we should be dealing with it? And how do you feel about how we have been dealing with it as a town?
It's gonna sound bad at first, but I have the workaround. I've always been aware of homelessness in Shawnee, just because I'm from there and I've lived in Shawnee most of my life. But even as like a native of Shawnee, the awareness factor for me is still pretty low. I see it and I'm aware of it. And
you're desensitized to it now, I'm sure.
Well, that too. And it's almost like you're just so used to it that you don't really know much about it except for what you've literally just seen. And I'm just now coming into the last couple of years learning about if we've been trying to work on it, if we've been trying to offer different things or take different avenues that we haven't before. And I was thinking about it right when I filed and I was working up my website and I was trying to pick out the issues I was going to stick to as a whole. And one of them was homelessness. And I thought, all I ever hear when people talk about, fixing it, things like that, or really complaining about it, is that the mindset isn't there yet for the community, for Shawnee to overcome it. Because right now it's at least for me, because I'm an English teacher, all I can hear is negative connotation behind it, like almost derogatory. And so I've only ever heard it referred to as a problem or an issue, and we're going to combat it or fight it. And, that, sounds like you're rallying the troops. But when you, in my opinion, when you talk about combating things and fighting things, it becomes us versus them type of thing. Almost like that's the mentality. And it sounds like there's a winner and a loser when you talk about combating, because when you think of combat, when you think of fighting, you think of not working together, you think of working against each other.
Yeah.
And so there has to be winners and winners. And that's, idealistic maybe sounding, but I'm trying to get there. So for me, trying to run for this ward seats, trying to be more in tune with my community, I'm even suffering from the lack of that. And so one of the first things I've kind of working in my head to be the starting point, because I know we've got coordinators, directors. I know Ed is trying to get this going. I think that helping people who have like housing insecurity, the homelessness, I think helping them overcome the obstacle would probably start with like examining how it's communicated to the community to deepen public understanding, because I'm running for a seat that would make decisions on that. And I'm not even fully aware, fully communicated to about the different workings about it. I think that would attract new supporters. And then the more supporters, the more the change, the more the development to overcome an obstacle. And when I grew up and I knew, you see the people on the sides of the road, I always, and it was a parent's thing too, but it was kind of like the way movies and films and TV shows portrayed it. It was almost like the perspective of that their homelessness was a relationship between them and like an individual, like circumstance problem. Like it was their one little poor choice or life card that was dealt that got them there, instead of maybe looking at it from like a poverty standpoint, or maybe the community doesn't have the right jobs available for the people that they're trying to house. I think we as in Shawnee could address it that way. We could raise more awareness, which it's becoming a thing now because I'm aware of it more now that I'm interested in being a part of it. So I think awareness is growing, but it can't stop there. It has to translate to action. I know that we have the Salvation Army, and I know we've had warming stations over the winter for the first time, I think, ever, like actual just warming centers. And I know of places in Oklahoma City where it's a full on like permanent shelter in a sense, because you can live in it. You don't get kicked out in the morning and then you have to go back in line at the end of the day. But I also, I see it from an educator's perspective too. If we want to boost people out of homelessness, there's a hierarchy of need in a human life. I don't know if you're familiar with Maslow and the hierarchy of needs. Basic level, food and air and water, warmth, rest. And then the next level, which I find synonymous, but it's technically the next level up, is safety and security. And then like that goes in with housing. In this case. So the solution, if you will, I hate to use that term because solutions go for problems, would be for me, like providing resource help, food and water, access to amenities for hygiene, and housing, which sounds crazy, like providing housing up front, low cost housing, so that those needs are met. And then people who are facing home insecurity can then work towards addressing their particular issues with not being able to find a job because they lack a trade or they lack experience, and not so much that they just lack safety and food and all the basic necessities. You know, when you're stressed out about things, all of the other things are taken care of. In our case, we're lucky. So when I'm stressing out about work, I'm not thinking about where my next meal is coming from. My students, if they're thinking about where their next meal is coming from, they're not worried about nouns and pronouns. So if we as a community can meet their basic needs up front, then we are boosting them to a level that they can work themselves out, and we can help along the way to permanent, like, removal of homelessness in their case. I don't know if that's too big of a dream for Shawnee at this moment, but I feel like that could work in my mind. It works in my mind.
Yeah, like so I think whenever I was in high school and middle school, of course, I would see, homeless person on the corner, either at the Walmart or edge of Mall Drive, about to turn on the Kickapoo, or corner of about to turn on the I-40 after you turn off of Highway 18. Those like the more popular spots where you usually see them. And I always noticed them, but I didn't notice how big of a problem our like homeless issue was until I graduated high school and started working. And I worked at McDonald's on Harrison. And I worked in the morning till the afternoons, like I think 5 to 11. It's like when I would work during the summer. And oftentimes you would see some of the same homeless people come in, and usually it'd be because someone gave them some money so they could get something to eat. They would come in, get something to eat and leave, or stay for a few hours and then leave. But you'd see them almost either every other day or somewhat consistently throughout the summer and every week. And then, so that's when I started to realize, oh, okay, this is an even bigger problem than I thought, because I've never noticed, because Harrison Kickapoo is on the other side, or Harrison McDonald's is on the other half of town. I never noticed homeless people in that half of town before, just on the north part of town. And then I worked at Wendy's when I got a little bit older. I guess I could say a little bit older. I only worked at McDonald's for 2 years and then Wendy's for a few months in 2019. But worked at Wendy's and it was the same thing, but it was different homeless people because it was on the other side of town. And, sometimes you could tell they had some mental issues that probably would be able to prevent them from being able to provide their own stability by themselves in terms of being able to go to work consistently, that kind of thing. And you would also, like I think occasionally, because you're the only people who see them on a regular basis, you would see them doing something or have something, and we would have to discuss, hey, this person has a dog. They didn't have a dog last week, but they say this is their dog. We know they can't take care of that dog. What are we going to do? Or, that kind of a thing. And it's like, that's when I started to realize, like, okay, this is like a huge issue. Like, this is like big problem. And I think there's an article from like 2013 talking about how awful the homelessness issue is. I have to pull it up again and send it to you because it's bad. And
I think our percentage rate is, I was looking at the census or something like that, like 20%.
Yeah, it's terrible. Like it's a huge issue. Like I think the statistic from like 10 years ago was that we were the worst city for homeless people in the state or the country or something like that. But it's based on like a percentage. So like not that we have the most homeless people, but like percentage wise compared to the population of our city.
Like per capita.
Yeah, per capita. And I was like, wow, that's awful. Like, we have to do something about this. But yeah, that's why I asked that question. Um, we kind of already talked about this a little bit, but public transportation. What would you like to see Shawnee do to have more public transportation or more walkability or, less usage of cars, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see our efforts to build sidewalks and I think sidewalks are, they're great. I'm glad that we're installing them because if it's there, it can be used. Um, I kind of think, what good are they if there's nowhere to go or there's nowhere to come from? And when I think about like in the area I live in my ward, if I only got to take sidewalks to get to Walmart, I wouldn't make it.
Yeah.
I was only allowed to take sidewalks and I only live 2 or 3 miles away from Walmart. And
So
I have walked
it's
that
a good
distance
walk. Yeah.
before, I've
Yeah.
walked that distance before for fun
Yeah. Because I was
around
about
the
to say
airport track.
that is walking. I mean, relatively speaking, it can be walking distance. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't think, it'd take a minute, a hot minute, but it is
It's
walking
doable.
distance.
Yeah.
It's doable, yeah.
Not if you're buying like hundreds of dollars worth of
No,
groceries,
not at
but
all.
yeah. But the mall's over there, so
Yeah.
walking distance. Yeah.
I think we're so spread out too. I know it's different in other smaller towns or bigger cities, but we're like in that weird in between, that weird growing phase where we either got to be small or big. And I feel like we're kind of mid-size and we don't know what to cater to as far as like our community demographic. Because we could, have a great amount of sidewalks, we could have bike lanes, and then the usage of them, the real effective practicality of it might not quite make it either, because like you said, Walmart's just a walking distance away for me, but not for everybody.
Yeah.
And if I need one or two things, that's totally fine. If I needed way more, it would be better if there was a store that was closer. And that's not a reality, because if we had too many of those stores, then we're just saturated with all sorts of things. So
Well,
I
you think
think
it'd be a saturation, but some people would just say, "Oh, we just have more diversity." Because remember, at one point we had Kmart, but now we don't have Kmart. But we didn't have anything to take Kmart's place. I
right, yeah.
mean, we have Aldi's, but we had Aldi's for almost 10 years now, so it coexisted with
It's all
Kmart.
north though
Yeah.
at this point. Like Homeland on Independence is considered south.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's the only grocery store left besides, mild amount of groceries
Oh,
at
yeah,
Walmart.
that's true.
There's
There's
nothing
nothing south
south
of
of
that. Yeah.
Independence.
Because what is it? Because that Save a Lot is on Independence,
And then Walgreens.
Walgreens.
Mhm.
Yeah. Wow, I didn't even think about that.
So if we've got
Because
all these sidewalks, because I know we're trying to renovate the downtown area, there's nowhere there to meet basic needs for product and food.
wow, I didn't even think about that until just now.
So sidewalks are great
Yeah.
north of Independence. And then you start to get to east and west and you're thinking, well, okay, we've got a pretty decent divide. But then south is Dollar General and
Yeah.
there's lots of them, but they don't have the product availability to
Yeah.
sustain like only shopping there for food and basic hygiene needs, other supplies for your house.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess for me, because you just made me realize that. Because to me, I don't live in Shawnee city limits. I live outside of Shawnee. Johnson's technically where I live, but it's the ultimate doxing I just did on my own show. But like I live way out there, so to me, Shawnee is just Shawnee, and sure, there's the south and the north part, but it's all Shawnee to me. So in my mind, I'm still thinking, okay, the practicality of having sidewalks if there's nowhere to go or there's not things of value to walk to, like a grocery store. I never even thought about that.
That's
Wow,
that's the
there's
first
no
thing I think
grocery
of.
stores
Yeah,
south of Independence. So if you do
yeah.
live, say, in the Pleasant Grove area, so like if you live in the Pleasant Grove school district, there are no grocery stores at all in
No,
that area
Pratt's on Main and Harrison has been gone like
for
longer than I remember
decades.
it being around.
Yeah, because I think,
Barely
well, there was,
remember it.
because there was two Pratts, right?
Yes. Yeah, where Walls is now, and
Yeah,
then
that's the one
one
I
on Main
remember.
Street.
Yeah, the one on Main Street I do not remember.
I
I've heard
remember it
about it, but
as
yeah,
a very little kid, like going
but it's been
there.
gone for almost 30 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, that's wild.
So like,
Because I'm aware of, because my dad's told me about these things all the time about the developments of Shawnee over the years. Because Walmart used to be, when it was first built, it's where Atwoods is right now.
oh my
That's
gosh,
the first Walmart. We're
I
in
didn't know
Shawnee,
that.
at least. You didn't
I
know
didn't
that?
know that. I thought it was where Coles and Buffalo
No, no,
is.
no. That's where it got to be afterwards. So I
Whoa,
think the
that's
first,
wild.
so when it was first built, I want to say it was like the 70s or early 80s. So it
Hmm.
was only there for like 10 years, maybe.
Okay, that's right. Because when the mall was built, the year I was
That was
born,
1990 or something like
oh,
that. Yeah.
88. 88.
I think it was being built then, but I think it
Built in
opened up
88. Yeah.
in, I think it opened up in 89 or 90 because it's only been there for like literally 30 years or a
Yeah.
little bit more than 30 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then one of the first things that was in there was Walmart, JC
Mhm.
Penney's, Dillard's, and I think
Yep.
Sears too. Those are the
Yeah. All
four
the departments
things.
that had moved uptown.
Yeah. And because I think Sears also used to be downtown
Mhm.
on Main Street or near Main
Forever.
Street.
And JC Penney too.
Yeah, and because the old J.C. Penney's building is empty right now, I think. Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, that is wild because you
Yeah.
can tell everything kind of moved up north, and I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, people only care about north part of Shawnee," and I'm like,
That's all that, well, because that's where a lot of what
yeah,
our basic needs are. And up until a few years ago, that's where all the potential for entertainment was.
yeah,
Now with the revitalizing Main Street, like I'm actively trying to get to Main Street to go eat at places or go get coffee and to see things and boo on Bell when we have events there. And
hmm.
so while I
So,
like the idea of walkability and working on that,
mhm.
we have to have the purpose, I feel like, first. Like there has to be a place to walk to and a place to walk from. And like,
So ideally, what we need is some sort of grocery store, hopefully more like a small business type thing, but even if it's not, if it's like a Target or something like that, to be placed somewhere out that way, and that would be good for that area of
like
Shawnee.
if we just had like because I'm thinking like not just Band-Aid almost, because just putting in a grocery store, yeah, that could solve a lot. But if we
Yeah,
could find an area kind of central into the southern area of Shawnee, which just sounds crazy because Shawnee is, in my mind, it's really small. And then when I divide it up in hemispheres, it's not,
it's like
it doesn't make sense.
miles of difference
Yeah.
between those.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like I could throw a rock at the other hemisphere. Technically, it's so small, but at the same
yeah,
time, like it takes 10 minutes to get from one end to the other.
yeah, or more than 10 minutes really, but
More than
yeah,
10 minutes if there's enough lights and people.
yeah,
But if there was like because the way I see like walkability and even, retaining groups of people, I could see if we had like, if you could just have an area where in a perfect world, you would be able to get the necessities that you need, groceries and other supplies. And then you would have a little bit of that extra layer of, if you wanted to go clothes shopping or if you wanted to shop at boutiques, if you wanted to eat while you were over there before you went grocery shopping, because that's the rule in your
yeah.
household, eat before you go grocery shopping. Just kind of like a central area of just a lot of different needs met as far as business, so that when you walk there, you're walking there, yes, to go do what you need to do, but you're also getting to experience around you too. I've been in like downtown areas in Kansas City and San Francisco and everywhere I've visited, and it's like, oh, there's a really cute bookstore. I don't need any books. I've got plenty, but I'm going to walk in there because it looks neat and I might buy something that I didn't need. And then I walk a little bit further and there's a record store. I don't have a record player, but I've never been in one before. And I know those are, very specific things that
Yeah.
community, those communities have, but we've got the potential to have that same thing too. And I know there's tons of people with ideas for shiny businesses that are local and, Cami with Theopolis. And I just wish someone would bring in like a brick oven pizzeria. I know we've got
Yeah.
lots of pizza, but we don't have brick oven pizza, and there's something about it.
Yeah.
But, if we can't, because I like the sidewalks, I like the walkability, but I don't know if
So
Shawnee's there yet because of the
so
place to
what
go.
what about some more public transportation like buses or something of that nature?
I
How do you
think
what do you
buses
think about
could
that?
work. I don't know like the logistics behind it. I feel like maybe Shawnee, and this is kind of putting more cars on the road, but I feel like something that could work to solve several things really quickly, jobs and people getting to move around. And if they go to a grocery store and they've got a lot of groceries, um, Uber or Lyft, trying to maybe lure one of those companies in and creating jobs for people who already, people are already interested in that type of job. We have DoorDash.
Yeah.
We didn't have DoorDash 3 or 4 years ago. I think to maybe start off there and see if that could, not go hard at it, but just see if that is something that could satisfy one or more needs, hopefully more than one need that Shawnee has. Because if I was trying to get somewhere and I needed groceries or I needed to take care of a few errands, a Lyft or an Uber would be a lot quicker than waiting for a bus that's on a permanent track.
Yeah.
I don't know if Shawnee's big enough square footage wise and population wise that buses would not be like a waste of resource,
Yeah.
gas and overhead costs and salaries, things like that. Things that I
Yeah.
don't understand because I don't own a busing company or
Yeah.
work in public governmental things yet. But I
Mhm.
maybe looking into one of those companies to come in. We get people who are already willing to do those jobs. We know they're here because they're doing them with DoorDash. I know we have Executive Cab and
Yeah.
one other, I don't remember the name of it, Miss C's or something like that, that are transportation services. But um, I see that Executive Cab. It's like seeing the House of Flowers van. Like when you see it, it's something because you don't see it often. And
Yeah.
I don't even know if there's more than one or two cabs. Um, but I think I would look into that. I would look into luring Uber down because we are big enough that, and we have a young enough crowd. Like if you think about college students who, if they're out of state
Yeah.
residents, that they would be willing to take an Uber to go to Walmart and get groceries and then get another Uber to come back. Or especially because parking at OBU is so hard to come by that you're
Yeah.
like, I got this spot, I'm not leaving it.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
would be, I would probably focus in that category. I would probably focus looking at coming in with one of those companies and seeing
Yeah.
if it could provide enough of an expansion for us there with public transportation.
Yeah. So my only problem with bringing Uber and Lyft in is just like the bad labor like practices of those companies. And because I mean, sure, for some people it can be good, kind of like side job. Um, I feel like if we had something that was not even necessarily owned by the city, but in some ways partially managed or funded by the city, and we could keep more consistent people working, it would be more of a viable thing for people to be able to work
I like
and
that
for
idea.
people to be able to, yeah, like a taxi
Like a
system, I
public
guess.
transportation Uber. I
Yeah,
think we're describing like
like,
millennial Gen Z version of like city taxis.
yeah, because like I think like a city taxi system would be kind of a better thing. And that's not to say that there can't be any like abuses there, but I
Yeah.
feel like that would be a little bit better because at least there it's if the city is partially running it or funding it or fully funding it and running it, there's some accountability there immediately and
Yeah.
not
I'm writing that
so
down.
much and not so much of a, oh well, it's an Uber problem, we're just letting them operate in our city, we can't
Yeah.
really do much of anything about them though, you know,
Yeah.
kind of like that. And you know, with a taxi system, you can start small with that, see who's interested. And, you know, like you said before, if some college kids want to do that while they're here, that's something they can still do. And it can be more of a managed thing where we know who's going to be coming here each year, possibly to do it. If that's, you know, something they can only do during the year, but they can still, we know that they can do it and we'll be able to do it for 4 years. And
Yeah.
then, and you know, like that to me sounds better than, you know, bringing in Uber and Lyft, though, you
Yeah.
know, not to say that bringing in Uber and Lyft would be the worst thing ever, because it's still, you know, helpful, I guess. But you know what I'm, you know, the labor issue with them
Yeah.
and the accountability issue, even if it's not so much a labor problem, because if, you know, there's a
Yeah. It
lot of
wouldn't be
Uber
considered
horror
public
stories.
transportation.
And then, yeah, and
Like
then it
city
wouldn't be
public
public
transportation
transportation.
if
Yeah.
it was Uber or Lyft,
But it's still a thing because I've heard
that'd
other
be something to
people talk about it
research.
too.
I'd be interested to see if other cities have like their own city Uber. I don't
Yeah,
know what you would call
because
it.
I mean, I guess it would kind of be like New York City with their taxis, but it would be smaller,
Mhm.
and we'd be able to manage it probably better than New York City because New York City's big,
Yeah.
and New
We
York
just
City
have to
also has
hope that
Uber,
there's
so
the
there's,
need too. Like, would people utilize it so that
yeah, and
it's effective and the money is being used
yeah,
usefully, you know?
yeah, because you can start out small, like hire, I don't know, 3 people, 3 cars, see how it goes. And if it catches on after a while,
Yeah.
add some more if there's more demand for it. And then if there isn't, you could phase it out and try something else, you know? Because I mean, because I think buses, you're right. I think buses would probably be a little bit too much for um Shawnee, because thinking about like how many buses would you need or want, and what would the route be for those buses
Yeah.
anyway. And like, because even Oklahoma City, their buses are not, they have them, but there's limited times they run, and then also I don't think they run everywhere in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
But yeah. But okay, so 2 more questions. Let's try to wrap this up because it's been a while, but it's been good conversation.
Yeah.
So what are some efforts you think Shawnee should do in order to retain young people? Since the state of Oklahoma as a whole has an issue with retaining younger people, specifically in the rural areas and areas that aren't Norman and or Oklahoma City. Um, so yeah, what do you think we should do with that?
It's kind of nice because you and I are in that demographic, and I think to myself, like,
Well,
what
I am. I don't know about you, but I am. Okay.
I am, I am in the demographic. Okay. 18 to 39 is the demographic in my head. Like,
In your head, okay.
in my head, like young people.
Okay, in that demographic, you were on the older end or the middle-aged end of the
Middle
younger
end.
demographic.
Well, and I also attribute like the part of my life that I'm in, like the journey part of life.
Yeah.
When I think what could keep me in Shawnee, because I am a millennial, and even though I'm from Shawnee, it's not, sometimes that's not enough when you're paying too much in rent for what you have, or your job isn't secure
You're a teacher.
because you're either in a career that's not secure, or the demand for that job isn't available. And so I think what could keep me in Shawnee that provides the security for me to stay and invest my life and my resources and my kids into Shawnee. And I think first off, housing. When I look at, and I assess rents all the time, because I'm always looking for the most for my dollar. And I've lived in a handful over the course of my life with my parents, by myself. I've lived in a handful of different rental areas and situations. And it seems like my options are really limited to where and how much. Especially, Shawnee's small enough that if I lived on one end of town and I worked on the other end of town, that wouldn't be a problem. And for retaining our age group, I would, especially coming right out of college, being able to afford a place to live here would be a priority for me. I would think that, we've got a lot of renting. I looked at the demographic on worldpopulationview.org or .net, and it is just the line between renting and owning is right there. It teeters the 50% constantly. I looked at 2010 and 2020, and then if you subdivide it by married couples or unmarried, it's still kind of, they're closing in on that midline of 50%.
But the bigger disparity is probably age.
Yes. So
under 45 is probably more renters. Over 45 is probably more
homeowners. Yeah. Yes. And I've always considered buying a home. It's just the property and the price, and then the availability to get a loan. The bank tells me at my age and with my student loan debt and my career that I can afford someone else's rent or someone else's mortgage in the form of my rent, but I couldn't afford my own mortgage.
Yeah, which insane.
I find that insane, because I have been paying someone else's mortgage for longer than I need to for the amount of money that I've been paying for, and I'm not getting anything out of it. And renting's not a bad thing. I would rent forever if the price was right for the property and what I was getting for my money. I don't have to buy a house to stay in Shawnee. I just want to be able to live somewhere that's affordable, and I don't feel like I'm being ripped off. Yeah. And so affordable housing for sure. I don't know if that means moving away from single family homes and the renting that capacity has. I know we have it. Maybe we look at like small, like bubble community housing, kind of like if you've ever visited Midtown in Oklahoma City. It's almost like Midtown is its own city in Oklahoma City. They've got housing, they've got food, they've got groceries, it's like a bubble inside of a huge, bigger bubble. Yeah. And then you go to the Plaza District, you go to Paseo, and there are all these bubbles that are next to each other that work together in one big city. And you could stay in that bubble and sustain your life with the basic needs and housing and fun and outlets for recreation. So I think we could look into changing the housing perspective of Shawnee, because we've got room to grow. Like I said, we've got those boundary lines that we can grow into. And then looking at revitalizing those upper halves of all those buildings that I've sit there all my life wondering what's up there.
Yeah. Because
I looked at, when I was looking at, different renting options when my lease was up earlier this year where we live now, I looked at one, I won't say what the rental company was, but they had a listing for a brand new single family home. And I mean brand new, literally. It had just been built and they purchased it and they listed it for rent, and it was $1,700 a month to rent it. Single family, 3 bedroom, 2 bath.
Really?
On the north side of town.
Jeez.
$1,700.
That's way too much.
And I don't know what that company's rate is as far as like how much income is that you make compared to what your rent is. I've lived in apartment complexes in Shawnee where you had to make 3 times the amount of rent. And when I did the math as a second year teacher, I was like, I don't even make 3 times that amount a month. I was like $50 or $60 short, and they let me in anyways. But they expected 3 times the rent, and rent was $640. That was in 2016. So I don't know if it's changed now.
I mean, now it wouldn't be that bad, but then it was probably a little high, but it was 1,700.
Yeah. Yeah. So housing that's affordable, convenient would be nice as far as proximity to things. So if we're going to put housing downtown, there's got to be, something down there to sustain, not just having to drive all the way uptown. I say all the way uptown like it's a moving city, but getting up and then desirable too, like what's around that I don't have to go to Oklahoma City to have fun. I can stay here and satisfy every need that I have for what's in town.
Last question. What kind of music do you listen to, or who are your favorite artists? Okay.
This is one of I won't even answer like my favorite movie or favorite television because it's
too many.
Well, and with music it is too, because I have always aligned music to my mood and my feelings, and it's the English teacher in me, the lyrics and the tone and the mood, the theme that correlate to the style of music. And so like here recently in my classroom, on Sirius XM, on my Spotify, I've been into like super indie, anything, pop, rock, anything. But my favorite band of all time, hands down, is Jimmy Eat World.
Okay.
Hands down. I've seen them in concert. I just saw them last month.
The Middle is them. The Middle.
The Middle. Yes.
Songs. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
I just saw them last month in concert again. Finally, since the pandemic and everything, post-pandemic, I've seen them 2 times at Kane's Ballroom in Tulsa. I've seen them in Tempe, where they originated from, Tempe, Arizona. And then I have seen them in Kansas City. Like I have traveled just to go to their shows before they were regularly coming to Oklahoma. I love Jimmy Eat World, but I'll listen to almost anything.
So where can we find you on social media, and what is your campaign website?
I have Facebook, Richter for Ward 6, and then the same handle for Instagram. And I've got a link on my personal page if someone's already friends with me, where they can just, if they can't straight up find that searching on Facebook, which I searched using my husband's Facebook and I found it. So it should be viewable. I have it on Facebook and Instagram. And then I have a website on Weebly, which is richterforward6.weebly.com. That is more professional, I guess. It's not social media. So it's the website. It's got my bio. It's going to have the finalized stance on major municipality issues, like what we've talked about. A couple of them are on there. And then I've got some others that I don't know if they're municipality related, but in my heart for Shawnee, they're related to local government. So I'm going to give it a go on those.
All right. Well,
yeah.
And what day is the election?
It's the last Tuesday of, I had it written down. Hold on. I'm going to get my desk calendar.
Of June, right? June. It's the 28th. Same day as the primary. June 8th?
June 28th.
28th. Okay, I was about to say, I was like, June 8th.
Yeah. I had to get my desk calendar out.
Okay, because it's the same 28th. Day because it's the same day as the primaries for everything.
Yep.
And because I don't know if there's any, not local primaries for anything, because there's no primary in my race, no primary for state senate's not up, at least not in our area. There's a couple of US Senate primaries, gubernatorial. So there will be primaries going on, but nothing too local except for the commission race.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.